locations, shall we?
I'll check Twitter. Hold on. De-airplane my phone.
Yep, we're live on YouTube, although the thumbnail looks a bit weird for some reason. Not sure why that
Google
is.
getting greedy. It
It's like
seems to
that.
be working. Yeah, that's nice.
Let's have a look at
That's
Zap.stream.
very nice. Oh, look at this. Seth joining as well. Is he
he's
in?
here, is he?
He's sort of grey. On time. Hold on. Let me also open the thing you sent. There it is. Freedom Tech Friday.
Hello, everyone, by the way. If you are joining, we're just checking everything's working. Welcome.
Right, that's open. Yeah, we might have this problem where Seth doesn't actually get in.
Right.
He's just sort of lurking.
Okay.
I can see him, but it's like it hasn't accepted him.
Do you want to quickly send a new link?
Shall I?
If he can't get in, do you want to just send him a quick message?
Yeah, and just message him and just say, hold on.
Yeah, I can see him as a guest. Hello, Vibrant. Nice to have you with us. True to form, we're just ironing out some teething issues. We will be diving in very shortly. Thanks for stopping by.
Do you know what I've just done as well? I had some notes on my phone and I've just deleted everything by accident. Oh no, he's in. It's just worked, I think.
Hello, Seth. Are you there?
Good morning.
Hey, welcome.
I think we're all good then.
I think we're all good.
Look at
awesome.
that.
The only thing that's not working, and this is not our fault, is it appears that we're not live on Noster. I've just refreshed Zap.stream and it's not there. So looks like that could be a Zap.stream issue. I've done multiple refreshes, but it appears that for whatever reason it's not playing ball. So Zap.stream. I'm just looking at Restream now. It says unable to connect. Okay, not a lot we can do about that, folks. So if you are a Noster native, apologies, but it's outside of our control. So you'll have to stick with the legacy media formats today. But let me do the intro. Hello and welcome to Freedom Tech Friday. For those of you that are new here, allow me to briefly explain what this is all about and why the hell we are here. Freedom Tech Friday is a weekly live and interactive show hosted on the Ungovernable Misfits Twitter, Noster, and YouTube feeds, albeit not Noster today. We go live for 1 hour every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern US time or 2 p.m. UK time. But you can also catch up later on the Ungovernable Misfits podcast feed. On Freedom Tech Friday, we like to cover off the latest news and trends for anything relating to freedom technologies. That could be anything from Bitcoin to Monero, encrypted messengers, privacy tools, and everything in between. Essentially, if there is a news item, tool, or topic that you like to use to help take back some control in today's digital panopticon, then we want to talk about it. My name's Q&A and I'm head of customer experience at Foundation, where we build Bitcoin-focused sovereignty tools. And as always, I am joined by my good friends Max, the head honcho of the Ungovernable Misfits Empire, and Seth, who is VP of Operations over at Cake Wallet. As I mentioned, this show is live and interactive, and we rely on you guys to steer us towards the topics you want us to cover, or to send us your Freedom Tech-related questions that you need answering. There's loads of ways which you can get involved with the show, all of which really help us to spread the awareness for the show. Some examples, just give us a comment or ask some questions in the live chat. Submit your topics or questions ahead of time for the show. You can do that on X or Noster. We put a post out or multiple posts out each week asking for your feedback and your input. You can, of course, boost the show on Fountain or any of the other Podcasting 2.0 apps. And you can also send in your questions or tips via Bitcoin or Monero at xmrchat.com/UGMF. And finally, and probably most obvious, you can just share the show with your friends on X or on Noster. So, without further ado, the boys are all back in town. Let's dive into the show. Max, Seth, how is it going today?
It is going. I sprinted upstairs to get on, so we made it just in time. Live. Wasn't gonna miss another one, but doing pretty well. Doing pretty well.
Glad to hear it. Uh-oh, did we lose Max?
He's muted.
I was muted, and because I was muted, I was talking over the top of Seth the whole way through, and I was like, "Oh, we've got a horrible delay here," but actually, it was just me being muted.
Nice.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm also very good. I'm also very excited to say that we have a prize winner from last week's episode. We had no one won the prize the first time. It rolled over, and now our good friend Jackie Hoddle has won the Gabriel Custodia Watchman Privacy Watchman's Torch newsletter. The newsletter covers the latest analysis, investigations, and advice for getting off the surveillance grid, regaining your sovereignty, and protecting yourself. That is thanks to Jordan. He put up that prize, so thank you very much, Jordan. Thank you, Gabriel, for making the incredible newsletter, and congratulations to Jackie Hoddle, who is a big supporter of the show. He won because he sent in 0.039 XMR saying, "Pure Michigan Meshtadel boost. Thank you, Mike, Chet, PF, Ben, John, Max, Carl, and everyone who had a hand in building out these communities. Your hard work and generosity have gone a long way. I'm so grateful for my ungovernable extended family." He boosted that in and then shared the show in all of the groups that he's part of. We share many, many groups. He's in the Meshtadel and many others. So big shout out to Jackie and his wife. They're building a homestead, and they've been working very hard and buying a load of stock from Carl, our good friend Carl, who's selling them sheep. He's very active in the Meshtadel and a huge supporter of what we do here at Uncomfortable Misfits. So big shout out to you and congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. I'm a little bit jealous about that that prize. It looks very exciting, so I might have to go ahead and purchase that myself as well. So yeah, congrats, Jackie. Thanks for getting involved. Very much appreciated. Quick hello to some people in the live chat. Clem Fandango, welcome. That is Jackie, isn't it? I believe.
It
Yeah,
is.
thank you, fellas. Looking
same.
forward to it. I didn't know whether I was going to be doxing people's socks, but he looks like he's come out in the open and said thank you, fellas. So that's it. Watchman Privacy's here as well. Hello, Gabriel. Look at that.
Hey,
Full
mate.
circle. And Silas Thornbrook, nice to see you as well. Thanks for stopping by, dude.
Yeah.
All right.
You.
Topic of today's title. Title of
today's
today's
topic?
show. All that, yeah. Google getting greedy. Seems like we talk about Google a lot at the moment. They seem to be finding themselves in the ungovernable misfits crosshairs at the moment, but not without good reason.
Yeah, what happened to the "don't be evil" thing?
Yeah, do you know what? When I was coming up for the title for today's show, I was trying to make a spin on that with some alliteration and make it kind of succinct and related to what we're going to talk about this week. But as you can see, I failed miserably, so I just went with some alliteration and hoped that was going to be good enough. So yeah, this week we had a news article, and I'm going to be referencing the TechCrunch article to be specific, that Google is tightening security measures around Android app distribution. This came out on Monday, and it's starting as soon as this year. Google is essentially going to begin to verify the identity of developers distributing apps on Android devices. And this is the crucial part here. This is not just for developers who distribute through the Google Play Store. This change will affect all certified Android devices, and we'll dive into what constitutes a certified Android device later on. The tech giant has stressed that this does not mean that developers cannot distribute outside of the Play Store. So sideloading is still going to be an option for quote unquote, I guess, stock Android. Yet they state Android's going to remain open in that regard. However, developers who appreciated the anonymity of alternative distribution methods will no longer have that option. Google says this will help to cut down on bad actors who hide their identity to distribute malware, commit financial fraud, or steal users' personal data. So, as always, guys, it's to protect the children. According to its own study, Google says that more than 50 times more malware came through internet sideloaded sources compared with Google Play, where it has required developer verification since 2023. Initially, Google is going to allow interested developers to sign up for early access starting in October of this year to test the system and provide feedback. But in March of next year, 2026, verification will go live for all developers. And by September 2026, any app installed on an Android device in Brazil, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand will have to meet the new requirements. Not quite sure why they chose those 4 countries.
Why there?
Yeah, well, my knee-jerk thought is that maybe that's where they're detecting most of these scammy APKs are coming from. I'm basing
they are
that
scammy
on
people.
I'm basing that on nothing more than a hunch.
It is where they're
Yeah.
installed, though, not where the developer is publishing from.
Good point.
That's a good point.
Interesting. The only thing I can think is this kind of fits the model that others have done with really heinous changes or changes that they think people will really hate, like Netflix when they cut down on people being able to share accounts. They did not start in the US or in most of Europe. They started in smaller countries first. So that may be part of it, just kind of like slowly boil the frog. But that is a very interesting set of countries to start in.
Yeah, indeed. And just to kind of cap this one off, starting in 2027, the requirements will be begin rolling out globally. Those developers will have to provide their legal name, address, email, and phone number. And I believe, according to the Tech Law video I watched earlier today, also a government ID. So yeah, what this essentially means is that, you know, in a couple of years' time, globally, you cannot kind of anonymously publish an Android APK, which is the kind of file format, you know, that you use to kind of sideload an application onto an Android phone. You won't be able to do that and have it installed onto an Android or a stock Android device, because this is where I'm probably going to lean on you, Seth, here, but basically the application, or sorry, the operating system will be looking presumably for a signature or a certificate from to kind of vouch for the fact that this APK was created by a verified developer. And obviously, if you maintain your anonymity and you're just publishing the APK file on your website or on your GitHub, etc., and you haven't gone through that process, then it won't have the checks and balances that Android will be looking for at that point in time, and it will just say, nah, I ain't going to install this app. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I'm assuming this will be an extension of the app verification tooling that's already existed in stock Android for a very long time, which basically does some of these kinds of checks and tries to protect users, which is like good. There's not like I think it's easy to like assume all of this is bad or evil, but there are obviously really good reasons to make it harder for people to install random APKs from the internet, because that is the vast majority of the way people's phones get pwned.
Yeah.
And so having better protections around that is fine. I don't have any problem with the general idea, especially when it's done client side, like what Google Play Protect has been doing. And it runs in the Play Store and it runs on APKs that you're installing. So that stuff can be done well, and I would be all for even just improved client-side checks to try and validate APKs as much as possible, to try and look for malware, like to do what they can. But the big change here is like that was already weird because they were still limiting in some ways what you could install. You could still bypass it, but it was a little tricky, so a lot of people would kind of get stuck there. But now the fact that they, if they go through with this, are not only restricting what you can install, but are they going to also remove apps that users have installed that are not verified by developers? Like, will they go that step even further? It would seem to fit, but they haven't spoken specifically on that. But the craziest thing here is, like, I mean, even if you think of like Windows, like, yes, they've added tons of quote unquote protections to try and prevent people from installing malware. People still install malware. But even like, could you imagine Microsoft just saying like, nope, this one's not verified. You can't install this exe. And especially for many of the cryptocurrency apps out there, freedom tech apps out there that are published anonymously or are not under a company, which is the easiest way to do this verification, things get really tricky. And actually preventing users from installing this is wild. I am really hesitant to think that this will actually go live this aggressively. And I will hope that it would be rolled back in some ways. But it's pretty interesting. I am definitely expecting them to keep the verification part, unfortunately. But I would be very, very surprised if they actually totally prevent users from installing apps that are from people who haven't verified their publisher, which is pretty insane.
Would this is just going to be on like a stock Google devices then, or Android devices? Presumably this doesn't then affect if you've got like Graphene or Calyx or one of these kind of other options.
Yeah, it's going to be done through Google Play services. So I would assume this would apply to any like prevailing Android OS. So Samsung's, like all of the normal spin-offs of Android. I assume it's going to apply to all of those because they're all Google Play certified and have all of these quote-unquote protections in place. So I would assume it would apply to all of those. Hopefully, no, it will not apply to Graphene. They've already stated as much. And you obviously, in Graphene, you don't have to install Google Play services at all. And even with them installed, I believe that they wouldn't have the access to prevent you from installing apps.
Do you think they'd then come aggressively at like F-Droid and what's the other one? There's like different... what's the other one called?
Well, it was Crescent is the Graphene OS one.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the name of the other one, but basically you can install apps. There's like an app store, but it's not doing it through Google. Do you think they're going to attack those sort of services because, you know, that's kind of I don't know about simple, but it's relatively simple to install Graphene these days.
Yeah, I really don't think so. Like, I do really want to assume the best intentions here, that it is actually aimed at preventing people from installing malicious APKs that they download off the internet. So I would be hesitant to think that they will actually go after these distribution platforms. The main question will be, will these distribution platforms just be blocked as part of this by default? Like, I doubt that they would actually go after the store on something like a Graphene OS or something. Because there's also not, like, how are they going to prevent that? They don't have control of the OS. They don't have the ability to enforce Google Play services. I don't know of any, like, legal attack they could do, but I mean, it is possible. I mean, we've seen them already making it much more difficult for developers like the Graphene OS team to build around Android with recent changes. So maybe that is part of that. Again, they say they have good reasons for all of those changes as well, but I don't know. I doubt that they would go after the stores themselves, especially just like those stores are not, as far as I know, any sort of prevailing method of shipping malware. So there'd be no good reason to do so when they really just, if they actually care only about malware, which in theory they do, they were most interested in going after the raw APK installation approaches and in areas they control, which would be stock Android and all of the main spinoffs.
Yeah, so I think that the main takeover for this is like you said, Seth, is number one, whether they actually go through with this, and number two is assuming they do. For the time being, like the obvious answer is an alternative operating system that doesn't have those checks and balances and doesn't have, you know, all of the Play Store stuff at the OS level baked in to kind of that would, if I understand it correctly, be the kind of crux of how these kind of APKs in the future would be prevented from being installed. So I don't want to be like to kind of hand wavy to this, to be like, oh yeah, well, we've got Graphene, so it doesn't really matter, because I guess to draw an analogy, it feels like 2 years ago saying, "Oh, Bitcoin privacy is fine because we've got Samurai Wallet," and look where we are now. So I don't want to kind of rest on our laurels and say, yeah, we've already got a solution. Technically speaking, yes, we have, but I'm like, I don't know. It makes me fairly kind of bearish on the mobile app ecosystem. And Seth alluded to this earlier, but I kind of want to delve a bit deeper into it as to be kind of, this just isn't a thing in the desktop ecosystem, with maybe the exception of like some Chromebooks, where on a laptop, no matter what the operating system is, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but you can just go and install whatever you want as long as it's in the right file format. Like there are no preventions. There might be some warnings, just like we have on Android right now for specific sources, but like I don't understand why there's a big push for Google to kind of lock down their mobile ecosystem versus, Apple not doing it, even though they've got a massive walled garden. Go on.
Well, much more people use phones in their everyday life for everything, especially if you look globally. Like a lot of people just don't have computers. And so this is a much easier move for control, if you would think it was for control, or it's a much easier move for safety if you think it's for safety. Either way, I would say, what percentage of people use phones over laptops or computers? Probably 80, 90.
Yeah, that's not a bad point.
Yes, and then desktop OSs is because it's a lot harder to just, when you do, that malware has drastically limited reach compared to installing such similar malware on a desktop computer. I will say, like, the one caveat is Mac OS is the only place where some software can be, unless you're technically knowledgeable, impossible to install. Like, for instance, there's a really good desktop client for YouTube called FreeTube, and I don't know what is messed up. What's that?
I think we've dropped. We're not live anymore.
So surely there will be a workaround here. I mean, the reason why this is concerning to me is that easiness of go not live. Hold on, sorry guys.
Still good on Twitter.
But now you're questioning.
It says the broadcast is ended now.
Yeah, it says the same. It says the same for me. While we're working that out, we've upset Barn in the live chat, which is never a good thing.
We are good. Let's just ignore it.
We are definitely live. We've upset Barn, Max. Why is that?
Yeah, I can't read his message now because my Twitter won't load at all. But can you see in the chat?
If I can back to let him know. That Zap.stream is not working. It's not our technical issue for once. It seems to be a problem on the Zap.stream side. A couple of comments from people in YouTube saying we're really laggy. Again, I'm not sure what's going on. It's like everything seems to be live but laggy. So bear with us, guys. Everything seems to be working on my end. It's just, and I'm at HQ as well, so we can't blame my internet connectivity or anything like that. Okay,
so
we're
just roll. Okay.
So just
we'll
before
we're being censored.
Yes, indeed. We are talking about Google, I suppose. Their tentacles reach everywhere. I've seen a couple of comments on various channels about this to be the lag is real. Wow. Okay. Well, let's just roll with it, guys, and people can catch up afterwards on the podcast feed if need be. I've seen a couple of comments on X and on Noster where people are just like, oh, well, this doesn't matter anyway because I can just use F-Droid or I can just use Zapstore or Obtainium, etc. And I think the piece that people, the piece that I can't even speak today. Now I'm lagging.
Peter Piper picked a pickled pepper.
The piece that people are missing is that to get those apps in the first place after these restrictions are in place will require the developers of said apps to actually have doxed themselves and to, you know, have put themselves through that process and be a quote unquote verified developer. So, you know, obviously we don't know who or out of the ones I've just mentioned will be prepared to do that. So just worth bearing in mind. And if you are still running stock Android and you're worried about this and you have no desire to go down the graphene route or similar, then maybe download those apps before all of this happens. Again, that's not a perfect solution because, like Seth alluded to, maybe Google might be able to delve into your phone and pull those apps off the phone afterwards. I doubt that personally. But again, this is Google, and as I said, their tentacles reach quite deeply. But I would be very shocked if they went that far and started removing apps from people's phones because they didn't meet the criteria and they were installed before the kind of new requirements were made live. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, the timing is ominous too, with this coming right after the whole scare about like crypto apps being banned. if they aren't a custodial exchange, basically. We had that back and forth that the Rage covered so well of Google's new documentation basically saying that Bitcoin, Monero, crypto apps would be banned unless they could provide licenses, but no self-custodial Freedom Tech app can provide their own licenses because they're not a bank. So that thankfully was cleared up. It's obviously they claimed it was an error. It's unclear exactly what was happening there, but it's not the best timing to then have this come out shortly after that saying we're going to make sideloading way more difficult or impossible for unverified developers, which would be a very bad combo, and I think should just again just keep people aware of potential issues, more reasons to get off of stock Android if you can. But like I said, you can go in and install stuff. The hard part there is if they block sideloading, you wouldn't be able to update those apps.
That's a good point.
That'll be another conversation for another day. Hopefully, we will have an update where they drop this madness. But yeah, indeed, and I just want to quickly cover off because it is tangential to what we've been talking about, and we've mentioned Graphene OS a couple of times. There's been a little bit of news come out from those guys this week around or coinciding with the release of the Pixel 10 and the fact that, you know, their life is getting a bit more difficult these days with some changes that have been made to Android. So Graphene OS has confirmed that the new Pixel 10 still supports all the features that they need, you know, unlocking the bootloader, flashing verified boot keys, and then locking the bootloader again, crucially, which is obviously good news. And it means that, you know, if you like to run the latest flagship, you can soon you'll be able to install Graphene OS on a Pixel 10 or the whole Pixel 10 range. But support isn't coming instantly like it has done for previous Pixels. So normally they could have the Pixel 10 support running within sometimes a matter of just a couple of days after release. However, this time they expect it's going to take much longer because of the changes of how Google is releasing Android. So the key difference in the past, when Google has launched a new Pixel, they pushed the new device branch for it to AOSP, the Android open source project, and that branch contained everything that alternative OS developers like Graphene OS needed to build support pretty quickly. For the Pixel 10, apparently Google is no longer doing that. Instead, the Pixel 10 will be supported with an upcoming Android 16 QPR1 release. No idea what the QPR1 means, which is currently scheduled for September, so just a matter of days away. And that means that Graphene OS has to finish porting everything to that Android build, and only then can it start with completing the Pixel 10 support. So not impossible, but according to one of the developers who I follow on Nostr, it's getting more difficult. Of course, they've already got their Pixels on order, and they're already starting to do what they can based on the changes that have been made. And all of this kind of ties into some broader changes at Google and the new Android kind of release schedule that Google is making. I believe they're moving to 3 quarterly releases and 1 annual release now. I'm not clear on any further implications that will have to people like Graphene OS. But they say that they can adapt to the changes. And here's the cool part.
they've mentioned that they're already working with a major Android manufacturer to make sure that upcoming non-Pixel devices can officially support Graphene OS. So for now, Pixels remain the most secure devices available and are the only ones with proper support for an alternative operating system like Graphene OS. But Google doesn't really, or Google appears to value alternative OS support less and less each day, and I'm quoting here. So Pixels won't always be the best choice once these new partnerships come online. I've seen a couple of follow-up notes from the same author on Nostr, and he's quoted some timelines of roughly 1 to 2 years. No information on who the Android manufacturer is, but for me, a bit of a positive to be, a bit of a kind of light at the end of the tunnel solution where we're no longer going to be wholly reliant on Google for their, let's be honest, great hardware, and then to be able to flash something like Graphene OS onto it. From a Freedom Tech perspective, it seemed to be the kind of the utopia combination essentially, and it's always been in the back of my mind to be like, Google could switch this off at any moment. And obviously the hardware side of this whole thing, particularly with mobile phones and how quickly that landscape changes, was always going to be the kind of bottleneck for this. So it's comforting to hear that the Graphene OS team are making contacts outside of Google to be able to have some other hardware or other manufacturers' devices available to support their awesome software. I'm going to be waiting to see how this one unfolds, but like I say, light at the end of the tunnel, and quite promising. Any?
I think especially.
Go on, Seth. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think just especially interesting because this has been one of the strong points of Android, and I know a reason why many people do like it. I think it. I mean that is definitely a small amount of people who care about side loading, but it has always been kind of like a core part of what Android brings to the table, and how it's different from iOS. So for them to go the same walled garden route as iOS, is odd. Again, this isn't necessarily walled garden, and I think that the nice thing for them is they can still say they allow side loading, so they won't go against the EU laws that have been put in place to force Apple to do so. So it kind of lets them have their cake and eat it too. But it is definitely interesting. Like Jackie Hoddle just said, it seems too insane for him to think that this will actually be accepted. Backlash should be so strong that smart people will find workarounds, as they often do. Definitely hopeful for that. And I mean, just like we're doing here, just like y'all can do on socials, like those of you listening, push back on this, call out how crazy it is, complain to app developers that you enjoy using that maybe aren't doxxed, and they can complain to Google as well. And if there's enough of an uproar, we can get them to change it. I'm sure it's not set in stone.
Yeah, absolutely. I just really I'm crossing my fingers that this partnership doesn't turn out to be like the big flop that most Linux phones have turned out to be. Obviously, Graphene OS is a very well polished piece of software and very secure, and obviously leverages all of the benefits of the thousands or millions of hours that have gone into building Android as the building blocks for it. So I'm quietly optimistic that it won't be that kind of that much of a flop. I think the main or the most difficult part is going to be comparing the fact that you could have this on the latest and greatest and arguably one of the best phones on the planet at the moment, the Pixel 10, versus whoever they kind of partner with in the future. Obviously, it's very much dependent on who the partnership is with and what the hardware specs are relative to the cost, etc. But I think it's going to be tough for them to for obvious reasons to match the hardware level that Google is able to do. But once again, a lot of conjecture, and I'm just kind of airing my thoughts on the situation, and ultimately we're just gonna have to wait and find out to see how good or how bad this kind of partnership is.
Yeah, I will say, just on the Graphene OS thing, sorry to monopolize mic time again, they did say they're working with a major OEM towards future generations of their devices meeting our requirements. So I think the hopeful thing to me is that they're not just building a new device for Graphene, which is going to have necessarily a smaller amount of interested buyers and would be limited. But instead, it sounds like the better alternative to me, which is that they work with an OEM to have proper support for Graphene OS. So phones that are getting in people's hands for other reasons can become Graphene OS phones, or people can acquire them specifically to install Graphene OS, which generally will mean like if it's a major OEM that already has existing phones, it should be reasonably good hardware, like you would hope. Yes, that also probably means it's not going to have the like hardcore privacy features that maybe people want, like mic disconnects and camera disconnects and that kind of thing. But that type of feature set is not going to appeal to enough people to make it worth it, unfortunately, from a financial perspective. So I think this sounds like a good in between. Obviously, like you said, it's all conjecture. It's been very sparse on details, but the specific way they're approaching it is encouraging, because I would much rather it be some existing phone maker with explicit support for Graphene OS and all of the security requirements there, versus them rolling their own phone. As nice as it would be to have a Graphene OS specific phone, it could also go south very quickly, as we've seen with many Linux phones, like you mentioned, many more like privacy centric phones.
Yeah, a couple of good comments in the live chat. Vibrant, with this change, regular Android is just shit iOS. Maybe chuckle. And William Hornblower said, I've read the main requirement for future Graphene OS phone support, and it depends on the SoC. I'm not entirely sure what SoC stands for, but he said, next Snapdragon Gen could be the breakthrough. Anybody know what SoC stands for?
Yeah, it means system on chip. It's the way, this is the term used to describe how processors are in phones, because they're usually the processor, the GPU, the RAM, the IO chiplet, the modem. It's usually all in one. So it's just called an SoC, a system on chip.
Nice. I knew you'd have the answer. All right. Okay. So, stuff to be bearish on, stuff to be quietly bullish on as well. A bit of a mixed bag, but Google, taking some steps or appearing to take some steps towards the wrong direction from a Freedom Tech perspective. So let us know, keep us posted if you see any developments on this, guys, in the live chat and listening to us on the podcast feed afterwards. Obviously this is dear to our hearts, so we want to stay abreast of this one. All right, guys, 20 minutes left. So as I mentioned, every single week we have a huge backlog of questions. So we didn't get a chance to do barely any last week. So hopefully we can put a good dent into some this week. The first one on the list is from Bmouth BTC on Noster. And they asked, and I really love this question, I'm always thinking about what tools there are to allow individuals to understand their blockchain transactional history. Are you aware that these tools exist? Can an individual take part in their own blockchain analysis, and are there tools to interpret the results in a meaningful way? I'm going to start by talking about one that is sadly no longer with us, and it's probably the one that jumped into both Max and Seth's brain as soon as I started to read the question. We... as with most things in the Samurai ecosystem, didn't know how lucky we had it before it was ripped away from us. They had a kind of offspin or a sidearm called OXT Research, and they used to have a blockchain explorer called oxt.me, which was kind of, I guess you could call it mempool space, but with incredibly useful graphs where you could open up transactions, UTXOs, see all of the usual transactional information, but also because of the way the kind of graphs were populated, and as you opened up each transaction, you could see visually the kind of links between where a change output was going, where it came from, and it was just a really great visual way for you to kind of do some chain analysis on, well, any transaction really, because it was essentially a public block explorer, and very, very sad that got ripped away from us, unfortunately, when the whole Samurai ecosystem got taken down. Clem Fandango, no, it's not a thing, unfortunately. I wish it was, but I truly missed that one. It was a go-to to kind of do some chain analysis on myself, and if I always like to, if I ever received any Bitcoin back in the day when OXT was around, I'd like to just go and click on there and just do some chain analysis on the person that sent it to me, just to see if I can gain any kind of interesting tidbits. It sounds creepy, but from a way of sort of if I could use it to help somebody and be like, hey, look, you sent me this Bitcoin, and obviously it's an open ledger, yada yada yada. Here's what I did, and I can see your past history.
See your balance.
Maybe you want to change your behavior and how you interact with Bitcoin. So Yeah, that was really incredible tool. But yeah, looking forward into the present day, guys. Is there any tools that kind of even somewhat fit the similar bill that you know of?
Not me personally, no.
Crickets.
No. Yeah, that's unfortunately no. I mean, like, Blockstreams Explorer had some interesting things that they added and never touched. I don't think they've updated that thing in like years. But they did have like some tags that they would apply to things on like what the transaction probably was, which was interesting and could be useful to just get a quick glimpse at like what that transaction might look like to an outside observer. But that's pretty much defunct now. Mempool.space goggles is somewhat interesting as well. Like it can be useful to see how that's categorized by simple rules that they use for the goggles there. But again, it's certainly not fully featured. It's very, very, very minimal. And it's only for one transaction at a time. It's not showing you anything about like what does this chain of transactions look like to an outside observer. The one thing, like, I did love OXT, but the one thing that was hard with it is you really had to figure out what you were looking at.
Oh yeah.
There wasn't much in terms of like, oh, you selected these 6 transactions. This looks like blah, blah, blah. It was very much like you had to reconstruct this chain and then you had to ascertain like, what does this look like to an outside observer? So it like, as cool as it wasn't that actionable for most people. But it would be really cool to have something open source, freely available, especially that people could self-host, that people could use to at least do the same sort of like visual graphing. I mean, I know AI is the buzzword everywhere, but AI seems also like a really useful tool for this type of analysis, like to be able to have some sort of simple, like locally run model that you don't care about how fast it is. And say, hey, here's an XPub. Update me every day on what recent transactions look like to you and what they could look like, or if any are connected that I wouldn't want connected, or like that would be a really cool project. I'm certainly not saying it exists today, and probably no one's even building that today, but that's one of the things AI is quite good at, is summarizing large data sets, and that's basically what this would be. So it would be interesting, but unfortunately there's not really anything right now. Like that's the sad state of things, is all of the best tools are closed source black boxes that we don't have access to unless we pay.
Do you remember the other one from the Samurai crew as well, was kycp.org or .me or .me or something? Know your coin privacy.me or something. Again, don't go searching for it, guys. It's been taken down. That was more of a transaction by transaction basis, so it wasn't kind of like being able to look at your coin history. KYCP, kind of, you could punch in a TXID and see like it would analyze using I believe the kind of Boltzmann framework, and analyze the kind of entropy of a transaction. So they did use some awesome visuals, and I believe now the latest update of Ronin Dojo has a very rudimentary version of this, so that you can go into your Ronin UI, again, punch in a TXID, and it would give you a kind of entropy score of a given transaction, and show some what we call deterministic links, to basically show how kind of give you a scale of how private a given transaction was. It gives you entropy, number combinations, and a linkability matrix. So that could be I guess something, again, that is of course self-hosted as well. You're kind of querying your own node to do that. So just looking at the blog post now, and it says, look, this tool is very far from the capabilities of KYCP and OXT, but we hope to add more useful heuristics in the future. So maybe check that one out if you've updated to the latest Ronin Dojo, if you of course run one of those as well. Good question, that, and I guess a bit of a stark realization of like how many tools that we have sort of had taken away from us, unfortunately. Okay, yeah, Seth, to answer your question, I am running the show. It's me that's hosting it. Okay, question from Zyka Boy, again on Noster. So, Monero suffered an attack. How insecure does that make it? Will this kick the Bitcoin devs into taking privacy seriously, or are they intent on bickering with Speedy Junior ego? Or are, or are they just afraid that the feds will come after them? Maybe, give a quick background on the quote Monero attack that's happened, and then we can have a little chat about what that means for Bitcoin afterwards.
For sure. Yeah, so for any who want more depth, we've talked a lot about this on the Monero Monthly. Max and I have last month and this month's, which will go live in like 4 or 5 days, I think.
Yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong
that.
there, Max. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there will be like full explanation there. So I won't get into all of the weeds. We also talked on this month's Monero Monthly, it's about to come out, on multiple proposed mitigations or improvements to Monero security. So that'll be a good starter if you want to know like what can be done about it. But the TLDR is there is an entity who is attacking Monero essentially for marketing purposes to pump their own coin. And by attacking, I mean they are subsidizing people to mine on their private mining pool. And they are, as far as we can tell, renting hash rate with their own cryptocurrency. So they print their own cryptocurrency called Cubic. They pay miners in that, and then any Monero that's mined on the pool they use to buy Cubic and burn it. So it's basically like a pumponomics thing that they're using for their own token. But the attack has been, while not successful in the sense that they promised a 51% attack, and by no record have I seen them reach 51% legitimately. Seems like 30 to 35% has been about the cap of what they've been able to hit. They have been able to achieve multiple large reorgs in Monero. I think the longest they've done is 9 blocks. By some accounts, they could have done longer, but didn't intentionally. Over 10 blocks is what things actually comes to Monero. That's all just conjecture on if they could have done larger ones or not, because there's not a way to know that. But those are obviously concerning. The Monero community is coming up with very interesting ways that we can improve security of Monero. There's been lots of discussions around that. But the short answer is like Monero is not insecure right now, but we should continue to consider how we can better secure Monero. And unfortunately, right now, since there is someone doing reorgs of a reasonably large depth, I think most merchants have started going away from the one conf approach that was pretty normal in Monero to now doing something like 10 confs. Like I know that CoinCards have, we have a cake pay. That's pretty normal now, just to provide a little bit of extra protection for merchants, especially when you're delivering a digital good that can be redeemed immediately that you can't get back. So it's those specific use cases where it's potentially dangerous.
But that's not just to put people's mind at rest a little bit. Like Monero blocks are 2 minutes, so you're talking about on average 20 minutes confirmation if you're buying gift cards or something like that. That's the biggest issue that we've seen. So like Monero under attack, yes, but it's not really affecting things at the moment.
Yeah.
And we went into a huge amount of detail on potential or discussions around ways that this could be resolved in the future, and so that will be going live in 2-3 days or something like that. So anyone who is worried about it can go into that. But I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding things, but I'm not particularly worried.
No, you definitely are understanding correctly. It's also like for the average person, there is no effect here. At the moment, at least, there have been no double spending attacks due to reorgs. The only way that you run into problems right now is that some exchanges have limited withdrawals or deposits, or have greatly increased the amount of confirmations they require before those are credited to your account. So if you're using something like Kraken, I know they've been changing around how many confirmations they need, and sometimes closing withdrawals, sometimes closing deposits, just based on what tweets they read, I guess. It doesn't seem to be very well informed how they're doing it, but I don't think it's not life-threatening for Monero right now, but it is something to be concerned about when you're thinking of like the longevity of Monero. But for the average user, it's not causing problems right now. That's not to say it can't, though. So definitely keep up to date. We'll keep chatting about it if there's updates every week on Freedom Tech Friday. And like you mentioned, Max, there's a lot more detail in the August Monero Monthly.
Yeah.
Nice, thank you. This may or may not be a troll question, but as always, we give prominence to the live chat questions if and when they come through. Greg Tanowski on YouTube has asked, and I have no idea what he's talking about here, so I'm hoping one of you guys do. Have you heard about the garbage man node implementation, perhaps? I don't know whether this is something to do with the whole core versus not debate, but I certainly have never even heard about it, so I'm not able
Garbage
to.
man?
Yeah, garbage man
Garbage
node
man.
implementation. Maybe
Luke
Greg.
Dasher?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess it's something to do with that. And if it is, then the short answer is no. I've not heard about it. Maybe if you can drop some links in the chat or something, we can have a look and maybe talk about it in a subsequent week. But it seems as though the concept has been lost on all three of us, unfortunately, at this moment in time. But thank you for getting involved with the question. We do appreciate it, and we're happy to talk about it if you give us a bit more context. All right, moving on to the next question. Comes from Foul Matters on Noster. How do you create a solid inheritance plan for your loved ones who do not have high-tech knowledge and don't want to rely on a third party like Nunchuk or Bitcoin Keeper? Multi-sig wallets are a good option, but can lead to a complex setup. I wonder what other clever options are out there that I did not think of yet. I'll take this one. There's two things I wanna hit on. Number one is to briefly mention. I know you said that multi-sig is a good option. I agree, but it can lead to a complex setup. Something that we're going to be doing a deeper dive on Monday's Bitcoin brief is the fact that Nunchuk have just added support for Miniscript, so you can do lots of kind of decaying or increasing multi-sig. So keep your eyes peeled for that show when it comes out. We'll be doing a deep dive and we'll probably be able to answer your question a bit more deeper as to whether multi-sig, more specifically Miniscript based multi-sig, could be a good option for you. That aside, for your specific situation where it's an inheritance plan for loved ones, I'm going to assume that they don't want to hold their own keys, or they're not. You don't feel confident in them solely being the sole custodian of their keys, and that you're going to quote unquote Uncle Jim them. My solution would be to use something like BIP85. We call it Key Manager in Passport, where you can give them a seed. They can feel safe in the knowledge that they have their own seed, which they do. It's an independent seed where they can look after their own funds. But you can be safe in the knowledge that if they go and do the normie thing where they don't back up that seed or they lose it or whatever, you can then deterministically rederive their seed for them from your Passport or any other hardware wallet that supports the BIP85 standard, of which there are quite a few now, I believe. So that they can have their independence, but they can fall back on you if they do something stupid, and you can then give them their seed and get them out of this shit, and they don't lose their funds, assuming they don't just give it to an attacker and their wallet gets drained, of course. The reason I say that is twofold. Number one, they get their independence and they learn along the way. But number two, you're able to support them in a way that means that you don't have to have the mental overhead and physical overhead, I guess, of backing up multiple seeds for those different people, assuming there's more than one. That those would all be stored and be able to be rederived deterministically from your hardware wallet, so that it's kind of like the best of both worlds. You're able to support them, but you don't have to have like 5 or 6 different seed plates buried in your garden and remember where they all are and make sure they're all labeled for sister, daughter, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
that would be my knee jerk, and I definitely wouldn't rush into multi-sig unless there was significant amounts of funds, and I'm talking a lot, or it was kind of like a let's say a shared pot where it was like the family savings or something like that. But even then, it would be kind of a bit of a push for me to immediately recommend somebody like that going towards multi-sig. Any advances on that, Max or Seth?
I was only just thinking, like, it's inheritance, isn't it? So giving someone a BIP85 seed with funds on it, if you think about it as inheritance, they'd only get that if you get hit by a bus or whatever. So then giving them those seed words or details to look after, you're effectively gifting them the money, not actually having it as an inheritance if you get hit by a bus. And in that case, now they're responsible to secure that information, and they might be a fucking idiot, or they might just not know how to use Bitcoin, and then they might leave that lying around and lose the money. So suddenly what is your money and would be your money until you die can now be at greater risk of loss. So that would be my only concern on a setup like that. Although you would probably be like splitting your risk, because if you got 3 or 4 kids and they've each got one, and your missus has got one, and whatever, the dog's got one, then hopefully they wouldn't all make a mistake. So I don't know. There's pros and cons to it.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you brought that up actually, because I've kind of got the question a little bit twisted, and you are right that they did mention an inheritance plan. Again, assuming that you're going to pass the funds on to them. So I'm glad you made that carve out, and apologies for getting that a little bit mixed up. And I guess this is where I'll kind of loop back around full circle and reference again, Miniscript and multisig. Again, not quite a reality yet because the tools are very new, and probably I haven't tested the Nunchuk version, but probably need a bit of polishing to make them more normie friendly. But we're quickly again moving into a world where you could have a Miniscript based wallet where it's a 2 of 3 where you control the funds, and then you could have, thanks to the wonders of Miniscript, give the kids or your heirs, whoever they are, some additional keys that are entirely useless up until a specific time frame that you can define. So let's assume that you say, all right, well, the key that I gave to my kid, I don't want it to be a part of this multisig wallet, but it can become active, and the multisig grows after, let's say 2 years. So what could happen then is that if you die and they aren't able to access all of your keys, but they have the key that they looked after, as long as they can meet that threshold of signer keys, including their own, like the additional key that you said it can become active after X amount of time, then that can be another great kind of fallback way for you to have your heirs be able to access your funds when you're not around, but in a way that doesn't compromise your security while you are still around, if that makes sense. So again, very promising land that we're heading towards, but again, it's very cutting edge at the moment, and kind of just needs a bit more polishing and a bit more support from hardware wallets. William Hornblower in the YouTube chat, what about the Liana wallet as a tool from the toolbox for inheritance planning? Yeah, everything I've just said applies to Liana as well. They were the ones from a desktop perspective that pioneered all this sort of stuff. But everything that I've just said is also true of Liana wallet as well, which is arguably been around for longer and probably more polished. Okay, let's do one last question because we did start just a little bit late. This one is for you, Seth, just so you got a chance to wake up. And it comes from Vibrant Subtlety. Can Seth discuss how the indexer works for Cake's silent payments? Can you use a regular Electrum server, or is it something novel? And can we expect to be able to self-host one of these easily in the future so that we can better maintain our privacy?
Yeah, it's a great question. The TLDR on how it works is that it's right now it's an ElectRS instance with a custom index added onto the existing normal ElectRS indexes. That is the tweak data that's necessary for syncing silent payments wallets. Obviously, this was done before there really was a spec at all for servers, and is working, though I know it has had some issues off and on that we've been working on improving. The main thing I'll say is absolutely self-hosting is the goal for this setup, but ElectRS is not a good platform to self-host this on. ElectRS needs like 4 terabytes of disk storage to store all the indexes, and takes way longer than anything else to sync. So it's definitely not the long-term goal that others would be using ElectRS. It was just a better one from a business perspective, serving thousands of users to be able to serve using ElectRS. But right now, a really cool thing that's happening is there's basically a silent payments group that has come together of a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. Josie Bake, who is one of the BIP authors, is leading that up. He actually has his own nonprofit now that he's using to fund those efforts, amongst others. And him and I am blanking on the name of the person who's working on it, but they have started off a spec for how the sync servers for silent payments should be built. We're obviously helping out with that, contributing to that. They're going to have a kind of an on-site in mid-September that our main silent payments dev is going to attend as well, to continue to improve our setup, and also the core goal being two things. One, we make it really easy for businesses to self-host a silent payments indexer that's performant at scale, which is what Cake is doing. And then two is to make a very simple, lightweight indexer that anyone can run alongside Bitcoin D. Those are the two core goals of that spec, and what we're trying to accomplish there. So that's definitely the goal. I know those things aren't really here yet. You could self-host the one that we do at Cake, but it's like I said, it's ElectRS. It requires massive resources. It's not ideal for the average person, but that is going to improve over time. So excited for that. Really good things happening there. A lot of traction happening, especially over the last month or so. Getting a spec now that's public. I'll drop the link as well, and we should see that snowball quickly into things you can self-host. One more quick thing. Sorry, I know it took a long time to answer this. The Fulcrum project, which I know a lot of people listening know and love and use, they are going to be releasing version 2.0. He said he just updated on GitHub, probably sometime in September or October. And he had mentioned having silent payment support as part of that. He already has the Bitcoin Cash equivalent in there. I don't know if that will actually make it into the initial 2.0 release. Maybe it doesn't as an MVP, but that was part of it. And that was one of the reasons why we donated to him building out 2.0 at Cake, is that we wanted to make sure that there was a good, easy, self-hostable silent payments indexer. And ideally, like even for me personally, I would prefer that it was just Fulcrum and I could just add a flag to enable silent payments and be done with it. Because I know that's kind of become the go-to for the average self-hoster in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, that'd be great to see, because if it does form part of a natural Fulcrum release, then by proxy it just means that it's going to find its way to all of the Start9s and Running Dojos and Umbrellas, etc. of the world, where I believe Fulcrum is available on all of the above now as well. So yeah, excited about that. I wasn't aware of that one, so appreciate the deep dive there. And yeah, that brings us a little bit over time, guys. So thank you once again for everybody that's joined us in the live chat. It was good to see another busy session there. Thank you to those that have submitted your questions ahead of time. Unfortunately, we only got to 4 of them. The backlog is still huge, but yeah, we appreciate your input each and every week on the show. And yeah, all that's left to be said is that we will catch you the same time next week for Freedom Tech Friday. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, catch you then.
Yep.
We pull the plug in 5, 4,